This is one of the most beautiful, amazing things we've ever done. But it's not what we meant to do. Let's say that you were kidnapped. When these kidnappers finally take off your hood, it's revealed that 3 of them are turning epoxy bowls. But we wanted to turn a leg. So we're going to try it a little different. Our thinking is this leg needs to be about 16 inches when it's finished. And it's going to be round, so why don't we start round? So we get a shipping tube, we take our biggest plug cutter, and we cut out a walnut plug, smear it with caulk, we jam it into place. Then for safety, we use some packing tape and go around it. We finally found something that these clamps are good for. Basically the Chinese finger trap / Rubik's Cube of clamps. We search out the most amazing products. See? And Jordan sprays this mold release like this tube owes him money. We search out an equally amazing deep pour epoxy. If you don't believe it's amazing, they obviously do, because they have put it on everything in the box. We hope to have a perfectly clear epoxy leg. We mix everything up, and we take this amazing black thingamabob, I don't know what you call it. We thoroughly mix all the epoxy. I'm now calling this black mixing paddle the Bubble Master. But we continue on undaunted. Our plan was to pour this 16 inches of epoxy and for it to cooperate by raising all the bubbles to the top. We wanted it to be perfectly clear. We're going to put it on the lathe, we're going to turn it, and it's going to be awesome. Well, it's completely cured, and we need to trim the end. Looks like we need to trim about 5 inches to get to all epoxy on this end. So I take it over to the table saw, I clamp it up, and I'm a little concerned not ever cutting 2.5 inches of epoxy tube before. So I clamp it up, I put on my brave face, and I stand as far away as possible while I'm cutting. Actually prepared to flee if it goes badly. We take off the tape so we can mark the center on the walnut end. We use a scratch-all on the all epoxy end to scratch the center, and then we're going to drill a little chamfer in there so that the live end has somewhere to seat. Well, it's time to start turning. In my first concern is this cardboard tube. So I take out my largest, sharpest roughing gouge and start working it. And I am actually pleasantly surprised. At first it does very well, but after a couple pulls, it gets completely, uselessly dull. So I sharpen and I go again. I stick with the roughing gouge until I get to this. And I realize it is very, very ugly. I try a carbide cutter, and this is the square tipped easy tool, and it does work, but very quickly I throw out a huge chip. So I know I've got to do something else. In frustration, I try the sharpened roughing gouge again, but it seems to have gone on strike, and its ability to actually make much progress is pretty nil. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for me to go to the wood store and buy a very large round-tipped carbide easy tool, just like this. As I start turning the solid epoxy, the round tip seems to be a little more forgiving. I can take long pulls, I can take short pulls. One thing I didn't realize, that it makes string. There's not chips. This epoxy turns into like an epoxy twine, and it is brutally messy. But I continue working it, slowly getting a taper. But when I do get my taper and I look close, I do have a lot of chips. But I think I can sand these out. I thoroughly wet sand this leg. I start with 40, go to 80, 120, 180, 240, 320, 400, 600, 800. I go to 1,000, and I believe that I finish up at 1,200. But one thing to remember is you have to clean between every grit. Next, I go to a card detailing compounding paste. I'll use an orange sponge, I'll wet it, I'll put a little paste on it. I've cleaned my leg of all the previous grit, and I will let the lathe do the work as I work back and forth. As we've been sanding and polishing this leg, we've actually lost all hope that this is going to be a clear epoxy leg. The one thing that we're sure of as we go to the final polishing with the show car glaze and a wool pad is that it's going to have bubbles. We polish, and this is what we have. A Milky Way of epoxy leg. A veritable Alka-Seltzer of an epoxy leg. But I think it's awesome. Thanks for watching.